Okay, yesterday we had our first Socratic seminar over chapters 2 and 3 of Gatsby, and rather than waste class time kind of going back over what you guys talked about, I decided to make this video just to make it easier so you can have these notes kind of on hand whenever you are moving forward in Gatsby. But I want to point out a couple of things both that you hit on in your Socratic seminar and that you maybe missed a little bit. First of all, both second hour and fourth hour did talk about the Valley of Ashes, and that's in the very beginning of chapter 2 of Gatsby. And I want to think about that a little bit with Marxism. So on page 23 we have this discussion of this is the Valley of Ashes, a fantastic farm where ashes grow like wheat into ridges and hills and grotesque gardens where ashes take the form of houses and chimneys and rising smoke. And finally, with a transcendent effort of men who move dimly and already crumbling through the powdery air. Okay, this is really starting off the chapter, and I want you to think a little bit about what, how does this set the tone and the mood for this, new section of the book, and also how this really identifies with Marxism. So we have, discussion of the line of gray cars crawling and the ash gray men, the really deep working class, the proletariat. And then, to talk about how this might contribute to author's purpose. In one of our seminars yesterday, someone brought up about how this whole book seems to be about class and image. And I think that, yes, that's definitely something you're going to continue to see come back and back and back. On that same page at the very beginning of chapter 2, we have the discussion of the billboard. Both hours had a good discussion about these eyes and what the eye symbolism in this chapter could mean. But we have the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg. You're talking about all this bleak area and the dust and this Valley of Ashes, and then the thing that stands out is this billboard with the eyes. Why do you think, think about this, why do you think there's only this one billboard? They're talking about all of this area and all of these things, and just this is the only area. And I think that you can relate that back to Marxism as well, and thinking about, it's not like our current society where we have billboard after billboard after billboard for different products, but it's also, just this one that's standing out, above all else. Okay, also both groups, and I want to continue to point this out, had a good discussion about the dog and what's the significance about the dog that they purchased in New York. What role does that dog play? Does it really illustrate something about the characters? And I think that, everyone kind of talked about the idea of her saying, I want a dog, and them going out to buy that. We did a great job discussing the characterization of Myrtle and the whole party in New York. How, that Nick says that he's only been drunk twice, and things like that, and why did these people get married if they're so unhappy. The slap obviously was a big part of chapter 2, and I think everyone had a good discussion about, who is Tom, has he hit Daisy before, what is the relationship between him and all the women in the book. And at this point, we kind of do have that Marxist idea come back up. They talk about marrying down a class. Myrtle and Wilson, she talks about how she, didn't marry necessarily someone as high of class as her. And then with Tom, Myrtle's definitely a step down for him as well. So is that why he married Daisy? Because she's more of his same caliber. I think that this is where we see some of those themes start to pop back up. We have, some gender issues, some Marxist issues, some race issues as well. Gatsby comes back up, obviously, at the end of chapter 2, and there's some references to Gatsby at the party. Think about why the author would do that. Why are we bringing Gatsby up in this, hearsay first? Do you know Gatsby? Oh, Gatsby's parties, never met him, things like that. On page 35, towards the end of chapter 2, there is a good quote that no one brought up in their seminar. And that quote is, "Yet high over the city our line of yellow windows must have contributed their share of human secrecy to the casual watcher in the darkening streets. And I was him too, looking up and wondering. I was within and without, simultaneously enchanted and repelled by the inexhaustible variety of life." Both groups mentioned how, you know, this book does read like a journal. We're seeing everything through Nick's eyes. But I want you to think about what does that mean, that you are looking up and wondering, simultaneously enchanted and repelled by the inexhaustible variety of life. And think about, you know, the change that we're kind of seeing in Nick. You know, he is becoming more social. He is stepping out of his box. He feels a little bit trapped in the middle of a lot of situations. Okay, I'm going to stop this video here, and I will make a new one for Chapter 3.